true love doesn't always begin with a perfect moment. Sometimes it begins with a simple meeting, a kind smile, or a person who quietly becomes part of your everyday life. And when true love finds two hearts, distance, time, and even silence cannot easily tear them apart. This is the story of two people in Phnom Penh who discovered that some love stories are worth waiting for. Before Phnom Penh woke up each morning, Vannak was already on the road. At 5:30 every morning he started his old blue tuk-tuk and drove through the quiet streets of the city. The roads were still peaceful. Small shops were opening, street vendors were preparing breakfast, and the first motorcycles were beginning to appear. Vannak wasn't rich. His tuk-tuk was old, his clothes were simple, and most days he earned only enough to take care of himself and his mother. But he was proud of his life. He believed that a simple life could still be a happy one. He just didn't know that happiness was about to find him. Vannak had owned the blue tuk-tuk for almost 10 years. It had belonged to his father. The paint was faded, the engine made strange noises, and one of the mirrors was cracked. But Vannak refused to sell it. His father had once told him, "A vehicle doesn't need to be beautiful. It only needs to take you where you need to go." Every morning Vannak remembered those words. Then one morning, while he was passing near Wat Phnom, he heard someone calling him. "Excuse me!" Vannak stopped. A young woman was running toward him. She was carrying 3 boxes filled with flowers. Her name was Malis. "Are you a tuk-tuk driver?" Malis asked. Vannak smiled. "Yes, I need these flowers delivered to 3 places before 8 o'clock. Can you help me?" Vannak looked at the boxes. Then he looked at his watch. 3 places? She nodded. 3. He smiled. "Then we'd better hurry." Malis climbed into the tuk-tuk. Vannak started the engine. They rushed through the morning streets of Phnom Penh. The first delivery was made at a wedding hall. The second was delivered to a hotel. But the third delivery was different. Nobody was home. Malis tried calling the customer several times. No answer. "We should leave," she said sadly. Vannak looked at the flowers. "Let's wait a little longer." Malis looked at him. "You don't mind?" Vannak smiled. "Some things are worth waiting for." She smiled back. And that was the moment something quietly changed between them. After that day, Malis started calling Vannak whenever she needed flowers delivered around Phnom Penh. At first they only talked about work, but slowly their conversations became longer. She learned that Vannak loved old Cambodian songs. He learned that Malis loved flowers more than anything in the world. She dreamed of opening her own flower shop. He dreamed of restoring his father's old house in the countryside. One afternoon, Malis asked him, "Why don't you sell that old house?" Vannak smiled. "Because my father built it." She looked at him quietly. "You really care about memories, don't you?" Vannak looked ahead at the road. "Some memories are worth more than money." Malis smiled. "I think I understand." One evening, after finishing their deliveries, Malis suddenly told Vannak to stop. "Why?" "I'm hungry." Vannak laughed. "You made me stop the tuk-tuk because you're hungry?" "Yes." They found a small noodle stall beside a busy Phnom Penh street. There were no expensive tables or beautiful decorations, just 2 bowls of noodles, plastic chairs, motorcycles passing by, and the warm light of a street lamp. They talked for hours. They laughed about silly things. And for the first time, Vannak realized something. He wasn't simply enjoying Malis's company anymore. He was falling in love with her. Before they left, Malis looked at him. "I think I'm happiest when I'm with you." Vannak's heart stopped for a moment. He wanted to tell her how he felt, but the words wouldn't come. A few weeks later, they became inseparable. They walked through Phnom Penh together. They talked beside quiet streets. They shared food. They laughed. Neither of them said the words, "I love you," but they both knew. One evening, while sitting beside a quiet street during sunset, Malis looked at Vannak. "Do you ever think about the future?" "Yes." "What do you see?" Vannak smiled. "An old house, a flower garden." He looked at her. "And someone I love sitting beside me." Malis lowered her eyes and smiled. She didn't ask who he meant. She already knew. Then one morning, everything changed. Vannak went to the flower shop. The doors were closed. Malis was gone. He called her. No answer. He went back the next day. Still nothing. Finally, the shopkeeper told him the truth. Malis went to Singapore with her family. They moved there for work. Vannak stood silently. "When will she come back?" The woman shook her head. She didn't know. Vannak walked back to his tuk-tuk. For the first time, the old vehicle felt completely empty. The seat where Malis always sat was silent. and Vannak finally understood how much she had become part of his life. As Vannak sat inside the tuk-tuk, he noticed something underneath the seat, a small white envelope. His name was written on it, Vannak. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a photograph of the two of them eating noodles. On the back, Malis had written, "I was afraid to say goodbye." Below it was another sentence, "Not because I don't love you, but because I do." Vannak closed his eyes. He had spent so much time waiting for the perfect moment to tell her he loved her, and now the moment was gone. 3 years passed. Vannak continued driving his old blue tuk-tuk around Phnom Penh, but he was no longer the same young man. He had worked hard, he had saved money, and he finally restored his father's old house. He painted the walls, repaired the roof, and planted flowers around the garden. Yet there was still one empty place in his heart. Every year he remembered Malis. He never knew if she remembered him, until one afternoon his phone rang. It was an unknown number. "Hello?" For a few seconds there was silence. Then he heard a familiar voice. "Do you still drive that terrible blue tuk-tuk?" Vannak froze. "Malis?" She laughed softly. "Yes." Vannak drove straight to the flower shop, and there she was. Molly stood outside holding a small suitcase. 3 years had passed, but the moment he saw her, it felt as though she had never left. Neither of them spoke. Finally, Malis whispered, "You never came looking for me." Vannak smiled sadly. "You asked me to wait." "I never asked you to wait." "You didn't have to." Malis looked into his eyes. "And you still love me?" Vannak smiled. "I never learned how to stop." Tears filled her eyes. She walked toward him, and after 3 years of distance, they finally held each other again. They stood outside the flower shop, holding each other while the evening sun slowly disappeared behind the buildings of Phnom Penh. Malis cried. Vannak smiled. Neither of them needed to explain the past. They already understood. Then Malis reached into her bag and gave Vannak a small silver key. He looked at it. "What is this?" "My new flower shop," he smiled. "Where?" She pointed down the street. "Not far from your father's house." Vannak laughed. "You planned this?" "For a long time." That evening, Vannak started his old blue tuk-tuk. Malis climbed into the back. They drove through the glowing streets of Phnom Penh. The city was alive with lights, motorcycles, restaurants, and people returning home. Malis looked around and smiled. Vannak looked at her through the mirror. "Are you happy?" She smiled. "Yes." "Why?" She looked at him. "Because I'm finally home." The old blue tuk-tuk disappeared into the warm lights of Phnom Penh, and perhaps that was the real lesson of their story. Sometimes love doesn't arrive when we expect it. Sometimes it leaves. Sometimes it makes us wait. But if two hearts truly belong together, even after years, even across countries, and even after silence, love can still find its way home.